The room was alive with electricity, every camera lens pointed like a predator circling its prey. And then it happened, a moment so shocking it could stop hearts in mid-beat. "Charlie Kirk exposed live on stage," the headline screamed, scrolling across glowing screens in real time. The audience froze. Gasps filled the room. Phones were raised, recording, streaming, capturing a spectacle that would dominate social media before the hour was out. Kirk stood at the podium, a practiced smirk plastered across his face. Confidence radiated from him, almost arrogant in its intensity, as though the world itself had no power to shake him. He gestured broadly, words rolling off his tongue with the polished cadence of someone who had performed this dance countless times. Yet even as he spoke, there was an undercurrent, a subtle tension in the room, an invisible line that had been crossed without anyone quite noticing. Across the stage, Jasmine Crockett waited, calm, unshakable. Her eyes did not waver. Every breath she drew was measured, deliberate, a quiet contrast to Kirk's brash energy. In her composure was a promise, the kind of promise that whispers to the audience, "Watch closely. You are about to witness something that will change everything." The lights intensified, reflecting off polished floors and the sea of expectant faces. Cameras flashed as if trying to capture the very essence of a moment history might remember. The crowd leaned forward, collective anticipation tightening like a drawn bowstring. This was no ordinary debate. This was a collision of ideologies, a battle of character, a test of who could truly hold the moral high ground when every eye and every smartphone was watching. And then the first line landed, sharp as a scalpel, cutting through the practiced rhetoric. A statement so brazen, so undeniably bold, it sent a ripple through the audience. Whispers erupted, turning into murmurs, turning into a wave of audible tension that swept the room. The digital world mirrored the chaos. Tweets ignited, notifications pinged, and the hashtags began trending before anyone could blink. In that instant, Kirk's smirk faltered ever so slightly. Crockett's poise only deepened. The stage had become more than a platform, it was an arena. And as the cameras rolled, capturing every heartbeat, every subtle twitch, one truth hung in the air. This confrontation was destined to redefine everything. But what happened next left the entire nation questioning everything they thought they knew about Kirk. The tension in the room was palpable, almost suffocating. Outside, the city buzzed with the usual political chatter, but inside that hall, time seemed slow. Everyone knew that what was about to unfold wasn't just a debate, it was a defining moment in American politics. The stakes were higher than ever. Weeks of contentious legislation loomed on the horizon, each proposal a potential catalyst for sweeping change. Yet tonight, the fight had become personal, emblematic of a deeper clash, the battle over values, integrity, and the identity of a nation at a crossroads. Whispers flitted through the crowd like electric currents, rising into murmurs that rippled across rows of seats. Eyes darted nervously between the two figures on stage. Cameras clicked, capturing every flicker of emotion, every twitch of a finger, every subtle smirk or tight-lipped glance. Social media feeds had already begun to light up with fragments of the scene. "Kirk versus Crockett live. This is going to be insane. Did you see Kirk's opening line?" The digital world was a storm-gathering force, a mirror to the drama unfolding in real time. Kirk, for all his confidence, was visibly aware of the weight pressing down on him. His prepared talking points felt rehearsed now, almost brittle, as though the force of public scrutiny had already begun to crack his armor. Each word he uttered was met with a mixture of nods, frowns, and incredulous glances. The audience, a mix of journalists, activists, and citizens invested in the future, reacted not just to his arguments, but to the man himself, the contradictions, the bravado, the arrogance. And then there was Crockett. Her calmness wasn't passive, it was magnetic. It drew the audience in, demanding attention, respect, and reflection. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need theatrics. Every deliberate movement, every measured breath sent a clear message. This was her moment, and she was ready. The contrast between her composed presence and Kirk's anxious energy created a tension that seemed to electrify the air. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as the undercurrent of FOMO intensified. Something was coming, something big. Hints of receipts had been dropped earlier, almost like breadcrumbs teasing the audience. Documents, quotes, social media evidence, all pointing to the unraveling of a carefully curated public image. The murmurs swelled. People leaned forward, desperate to catch every word, every nuance, knowing instinctively that what they were about to witness could alter public perception forever. Outside the hall, pundits speculated feverishly. Twitter exploded with predictions, theories, and urgent calls to watch. "This isn't just a debate," one tweet read. "This is the moment that defines character. America is watching." The cultural and political ramifications were clear. A single line, a single revelation could shift public opinion, challenge established narratives, and set the stage for a reckoning. Inside, the crowd's energy became a living entity, pulsing with anticipation. Each whisper, each gasp, each flash of a camera captured the mounting pressure, the sense that history itself was pressing forward. The audience could feel it, almost instinctively, the collision of preparation and exposure, of arrogance and principle, of image and truth. And with every passing second, the stage seemed less like a debate platform and more like an arena of destiny, where every word, every gesture, every subtle inflection could tip the scales. And then, in a move no one saw coming, Crockett unveiled what would become the ultimate proof. Charlie Kirk's name had become synonymous with a certain kind of political bravado. From a young age, he had understood the power of charisma, the way a confident smile or a well-timed quip could captivate crowds and dominate airwaves. He didn't just speak. He performed, weaving narratives that appealed to ambition, anger, and identity, carefully molding perception to his advantage. Television appearances, radio interviews, viral clips on social media, every platform became a stage, every audience a stepping stone in the architecture of his influence. By the time he reached the national stage, he had amassed a following that hung on his every word, a generation of young conservatives eager for guidance, empowerment, and someone who could articulate their frustrations with unflinching certainty. Yet behind the meticulously crafted image, cracks had begun to form. His rapid ascent had been accompanied by controversy. Headlines flashed across screens like staccato bursts, Kirk under fire for misleading claims. Youth group funding scrutiny, contradictions exposed in public statements. The contradictions were subtle, often buried beneath layers of media spin, but they were there, lingering like shadows waiting to be illuminated. Each tweet, each clip, each overconfident speech had left digital fingerprints that could, and eventually would, be traced back to him. The arrogance that had once been a charm became, over time, a liability. Kirk's confidence sometimes morphed into hubris, a smug certainty that he was untouchable. He dismissed critics with sharp retorts, often laughing at dissent or framing it as irrelevant. His performances were polished, rehearsed, and relentless, projecting an image of dominance even when reality was far messier. Yet for those who looked closely, the cracks were visible. A misquoted statistic here, a half-truth there, a defensive smile when pressed too hard. These were not mistakes born of ignorance. They were calculated risks. And risks always come with consequences. Cinematically, his rise read like a montage, flashing headlines across the screen, clips of raucous rallies, viral moments replayed over and over, juxtaposed with tweets that hinted at contradictions, public statements that seemed to conflict with one another, and commentary from opponents questioning his methods. Each image, each soundbite, constructed a duality: Kirk, the confident media figure, and Kirk, the man who could be unmasked. The contrast heightened the drama, setting the stage for a confrontation that felt inevitable, almost fated. Yet despite the controversies and the whispers behind closed doors, Kirk projected an aura of untouchability. He moved through the political landscape with the grace of someone who believed the world would bend to his narrative. Social media amplified this illusion. Clips of him confidently addressing crowds, delivering sharp critiques of his opponents, and rallying supporters to his side went viral. The online applause was deafening, creating the impression that he was not just a political player but a cultural force. Immune to critique, impervious to accountability. For the casual observer, Kirk seemed invincible. The very elements that made him a captivating figure, the charisma, the certainty, the media savvy, also blinded many to the vulnerabilities that existed beneath the surface. It was precisely this combination of magnetism and arrogance public dominance, and private contradictions that made him a figure ripe for exposure. Audiences who had once cheered now found themselves on the precipice of disbelief, wondering if the confident, untouchable persona they had idolized could withstand scrutiny. And so, Kirk's story became a study in contrasts, the rise fueled by talent and audacity, the veneer of control masking the vulnerabilities that had quietly accumulated over years of performance. Each step he took, each speech he gave, each viral post shared, had created the perfect conditions for a reckoning, one that would not just challenge his arguments but strike at the very image he had so carefully curated. But behind the bravado, his opponents had been quietly preparing for the moment that would change everything. Jasmine Crockett's rise had been quiet, deliberate, and grounded in a principle that many politicians speak of, but few embody: unwavering dedication to truth and justice. Long before the cameras and the headlines, she was in the trenches, advocating for communities too often ignored, listening to voices drowned out by power and wealth. Her journey was not scripted for virality. It was forged in courtrooms, community halls, and late-night conversations with constituents who trusted her to stand up when no one else would. Her path was marked by struggle. Growing up, Crockett had witnessed inequality firsthand. She had seen families navigating systems designed to fail them, neighborhoods forgotten by those in power, and the relentless weight of skepticism that falls on those who dare to challenge the status quo. These experiences weren't just background, they were the foundation of her empathy, her moral compass, and her determination to act where others only spoke. Every victory she achieved, every piece of legislation she championed, was the result of meticulous preparation and an unshakable belief that the truth mattered more than popularity, more than optics, more than applause. Crockett's credibility was hard-earned. Late nights were spent reviewing documents, analyzing policy, cross-referencing sources, and preparing for arguments that could decide lives. While others relied on spin or theatrics, she relied on facts, precision, and an intimate understanding of the stakes. Her intellect wasn't flashy. It was disciplined, methodical, and entirely focused on outcomes that served the public. In every hearing, debate, or committee meeting, Crockett's presence exuded quiet authority, the kind that commands attention not through volume, but through mastery and authenticity. Her journey was punctuated with moments that would define her character. Flashbacks to her early days as a community organizer revealed late-night drives across neighborhoods to meet residents, stories of families she helped navigate legal barriers, and small victories that collectively shaped a reputation of integrity. Motivational quotes often surfaced in her speeches, reflecting her guiding ethos: "Justice is not given. It is demanded," she once said, and it wasn't just rhetoric, it was lived reality. The audience absorbed these glimpses of her past, sensing the weight of her experience and the sincerity of her purpose. By the time Crockett stepped onto the national stage to face Kirk, she carried more than the hopes of her constituents. She carried a lifetime of preparation. Every challenge, every setback, every victory had honed her ability to think several moves ahead. Her research was exhaustive, her arguments precise, and her strategy designed not for spectacle but for truth. This was not improvisation. It was orchestration, a symphony of intellect and moral clarity set against the brash, overconfident persona of her opponent. The cinematic contrast between the two figures was striking. While Kirk relied on performance and bravado, Crockett embodied focus and composure. Camera angles would capture her calm determination, close-ups on her steady gaze as Kirk flailed with rehearsed talking points. Audience reactions reflected this polarity, a mixture of anticipation, admiration, and a collective sense that they were witnessing someone extraordinary, someone prepared not just to argue, but to dismantle deception with grace and authority. Her preparation also reflected her connection to broader ideals. Every document she presented, every quote she cited, every counter-argument she had lined up was tied to principles that resonated deeply with her supporters: fairness, accountability, dignity, and the unshakable belief that facts and moral clarity could cut through even the most confident misinformation. It was this combination of intellect, ethics, and lived experience that made her uniquely positioned to confront Kirk, not as an equal in performative skill, but as a force capable of revealing truth in a way that was undeniable. As Crockett's story unfolded in flashbacks and commentary, the audience could sense the weight of her journey. This was more than preparation. It was a testament to resilience. Every struggle, every challenge she had faced, every late night spent in study or advocacy, was a thread in a tapestry that now stretched across the stage. The narrative was cinematic in its sweep, the past informing the present, the personal shaping the political, the quiet heroism of everyday diligence colliding with the bluster of unchecked ambition. And when the two finally faced off, the stage was set for a confrontation no one would forget. The stage was electric, every light aimed to capture the collision of two forces, two visions of America locked in a public reckoning. From the moment the debate began, tension hung like a thick fog, pressing down on every seat, every camera lens, every whispered conversation. The audience could feel it, a charge that made hearts race and breaths shallow. This wasn't just politics. It was a war of wills, a theater of character, and the stakes could not have been higher. Kirk opened with practiced confidence, his words rolling off his tongue with the polish of a man who believed the world belonged to him. At first the crowd reacted predictably, nods from supporters, polite murmurs from skeptics. But slowly, cracks began to show. The bravado that had defined him seemed forced, almost brittle. Each time Crockett interjected, her calm authority punctured the space around him. The camera caught fleeting expressions, an eyebrow raised, a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, a pause too long before his next line. Every subtle movement betrayed the first signs of unease. Crockett's composure was magnetic. She didn't raise her voice, didn't lean into theatrics, didn't react with panic or irritation. Instead, she spoke with precision, each word a calculated strike, each phrase layered with context and undeniable facts. The audience leaned forward, caught between admiration and disbelief, sensing that the contrast between the two figures was becoming the story itself. She wasn't just answering him, she was dismantling the illusion he had built, piece by piece, with grace and certainty. The verbal jabs escalated, carefully measured yet increasingly pointed. Kirk attempted to regain control, throwing rhetorical punches, relying on rehearsed quips and moments of bluster. But every attempt was met with Crockett's unflappable logic, subtle interjections that exposed contradictions and half-truths. Pauses became dramatic tools. The camera zoomed in on Kirk's faltering expressions, on the audience holding its collective breath, on Crockett's serene gaze that seemed to silently say, "I am ready for this." Murmurs swelled in the room, punctuated by the faint rustle of papers and the click of cameras snapping in rapid succession. Each exchange became a mini-drama, a scene in a larger narrative that the audience could not look away from. Kirk's smirk wavered. A defensive laugh sounded hollow in the tension-filled silence. He tried to dominate the conversation with volume and repetition, but it only highlighted his unraveling. Meanwhile, Crockett maintained her rhythm, each response timed to maximize clarity and impact. Each fact delivered like a precision strike against the edifice of arrogance. The audience felt the suspense as if it were a living entity. Every shift in tone, every carefully chosen word, every glance carried weight. Some leaned in, gripping seats, sensing the inevitability building. Others exchanged stunned glances, recognizing that what they were witnessing was more than a debate. It was an unmasking, a moment where preparation and integrity collided with performative confidence. Social media feeds were already igniting in real time. Clips of subtle smirks, uneasy gestures, and poised counterpoints began trending almost instantly. Online commentators debated in real time, highlighting each word, each glance, each pause. The tension was no longer contained to the stage. It rippled outward, making the nation feel as though it, too, were holding its breath. The escalation was a symphony of suspense, drama, and contrast. Kirk's confident posture wavered, his cadence faltered, and the cracks in his performance became impossible to ignore. Crockett's precision, calm, and command of the facts turned every moment into a cinematic tableau of heroism against arrogance. Every viewer, both in the room and online, could sense that the climax was approaching. Then, with the world watching, Crockett delivered the move that would bring Kirk to his knees. Crockett paused, letting the air thicken with expectation. The lights seemed to dim around her, the cameras focusing like spotlights on a stage where destiny had chosen a moment. Every eye in the room followed her movements. She reached for the folder on the podium, sliding it open with deliberate slowness. The sound of the papers shifting was almost audible in the tense silence. Kirk leaned in, expecting theatrics, expecting bluster, expecting the usual lines that had carried him this far. What he did not expect, and what the audience had been waiting for, was the precise, undeniable evidence Crockett now revealed. She began with documents, contracts, public records, emails, all carefully annotated and presented with clarity that left no room for misinterpretation. Each page she lifted was a thread, pulling at the tapestry of lies, contradictions, and omissions Kirk had woven over years. The camera zoomed in on the fine print, capturing details that would later flood social media feeds. The audience murmured, whispers swelling into audible gasps. Journalists reached for their phones, capturing every second, knowing that history was being recorded live. Crockett then moved to quotes, public statements Kirk had made, speeches that had been dissected countless times, and social media posts carefully archived. One by one, she read them aloud, letting each statement hang in the air, exposing inconsistencies, exaggerations, and statements that directly contradicted his current rhetoric. The rhythm was deliberate. Pause, read, let the audience react, allow Kirk a chance to recover. Each pause was cinematic, a beat designed to maximize tension and impact. The room was a taut wire of expectation, every eye tracking the unraveling spectacle. Kirk's composure faltered. The smirk that had been his armor slipped, replaced by an uneasy twitch in his jaw. Words that once came effortlessly now stumbled awkwardly, fragments of rehearsed rhetoric crumbling mid-air. He gestured defensively, hands rising and falling as though to ward off the truth itself. His eyes darted to the audience, searching for an ally, a friendly face, a hint that he could regain control, but there was none. Every camera lens captured the slow, inexorable collapse of the persona he had so meticulously constructed. As Crockett's revelations mounted, she produced video clips, moments previously circulating online, now juxtaposed against his current statements. Each clip landed like a hammer striking iron, reinforcing the narrative of arrogance and misdirection. The audience's reactions intensified. Gasps echoed, the shuffling of papers became a backdrop to audible murmurs, and camera flashes punctuated the drama like punctuation in a sentence no one could stop reading. The contrast was stark. Crockett's calm authority versus Kirk's growing desperation, her preparation versus his unraveling, her clarity versus his confusion. Social media erupted in tandem. Hashtags began trending. KIRK exposed, Hot Crockett receipts, Art moment of truth. Tweets poured in. Watching this live, Kirk has no defense left. Crockett just dismantled every talking point. The composure is unreal. This is masterclass debate. The imagined commentary amplified the moment, validating what the live audience already sensed. A reckoning was unfolding, and Crockett was delivering it with precision and dignity. Every notification pinged like a drumbeat, signaling the digital acknowledgement of a performance that would dominate headlines and discussion for days. Crockett's strategy was flawless. She didn't rush. She didn't over-explain. She allowed the audience to connect the dots themselves, letting the weight of the evidence speak louder than any rhetorical flourish could. Each document, each quote, each video was a deliberate strike, aimed not at theatrics but at undeniable truth. And with every revelation, Kirk's attempts to interrupt or retort became increasingly erratic, desperate. His stammering, once subtle, became more pronounced. Gestures became frantic, hands waving as though trying to fend off reality itself. The cameras caught it all, capturing a man who had thrived on performance now drowning in the evidence of his own contradictions. The room's energy was a living thing, pulsing with every reaction. Some viewers covered their mouths in shock, others leaned forward, riveted. Every flash of a phone camera, every murmured gasp, every subtle nod from those paying close attention created a rhythm of suspense, a cadence that intensified the drama. Crockett's calm presence, juxtaposed against Kirk's visible unraveling, made each reveal feel like the inevitable climax of a story years in the making. Even the commentators outside the room could not contain their excitement. Streams carried clips in real time, analysts dissecting every nuance, every pause, every subtle glance. Tweets multiplied by the second. This is incredible. Crockett just exposed him live. Kirk's arrogance is his undoing. The receipts don't lie. This is why preparation matters. The social validation layer, the imagined roar of millions online, added weight to the moment, reinforcing the sense that the hero had not just won an argument, but had captured public consciousness in a way that would resonate far beyond the debate stage. Crockett concluded her presentation with deliberate finality, lifting the last document, allowing a beat of silence to let the impact settle. The audience's reactions intensified into a collective gasp, a crescendo of shock and admiration. Kirk's shoulders slumped, the last remnants of his earlier poise evaporating under the undeniable clarity of evidence. He muttered something barely audible over the tidal wave of reaction, but it barely registered. The room had already absorbed the verdict. The confident, untouchable antagonist had been exposed, his narrative fractured, and his credibility shaken. For the audience, both live and online, the moment felt almost cinematic in scope. Every flash, every reaction, every tweet contributed to a montage of validation, outrage, and awe. Crockett had not only countered her opponent, she had orchestrated a public reckoning, one that illustrated the power of preparation, integrity, and courage. And as the final images of Kirk's unraveling lingered in the room, it became clear that this was not merely a debate victory, it was a defining cultural moment, a lesson in accountability and a reminder that truth, when wielded with precision and composure, could topple even the most confident of figures. As the evidence sank in, the digital world erupted, and the ripple effects were immediate. The moment Crockett dropped the evidence, the room seemed to fracture, the tension spilling out into the wider world in a surge of digital energy. Social media erupted almost instantly. Phones lit up, notifications pinged, and hashtags began trending before anyone could blink. Kirk exposed, Crockett wins, receipts don't lie. Memes proliferated at lightning speed, capturing Kirk's faltering expressions and juxtaposing them against Crockett's calm, unwavering gaze. Each post was a ripple, spreading further, faster, pulling in viewers who hadn't even watched the debate live, but were drawn into the spectacle nonetheless. Commentators and pundits scrambled to interpret the scene. Political analysts dissected every word, every pause, every strategic choice. Television panels replayed the clips in slow motion, highlighting the subtle shifts in Kirk's demeanor and Crockett's composed authority. Some critics attempted to defend him, pointing to past successes, charisma, and his loyal base, but the tide had clearly shifted. Social validation amplified the impact. Viewers shared screenshots, clips, and threads, turning private outrage into a collective experience. Online discussions surged. "This is accountability in action," tweeted one commentator. "Preparation and integrity are unbeatable." The digital world had not just witnessed a debate. It had witnessed a cultural reckoning. Celebrities and public figures joined the conversation, further expanding the narrative. Endorsements of Crockett's poise and diligence appeared across platforms. Actors, journalists, activists, and politicians praised her measured approach and moral clarity. Their commentary wasn't just admiration, it was confirmation that the moment carried significance far beyond the immediate audience. Meanwhile, Kirk's defenders scrambled, their posts increasingly defensive, reactive, and unable to stem the flow of evidence-backed criticism. The contrast between Crockett's rising admiration and Kirk's faltering credibility became impossible to ignore, a public display of moral clarity eclipsing theatrics. The memes alone told a story of cultural impact. Each image and caption distilled hours of preparation and live drama into a single, shareable moment. The audience, already invested in identity, justice, and truth, found themselves validating their own values through these viral artifacts. Some memes emphasized Kirk's collapse, some highlighted Crockett's poise, and others combined both, creating a narrative that spread across social media like wildfire. Every share, retweet, and comment amplified the spectacle, ensuring that the conversation would dominate news cycles for days, if not weeks. Public opinion shifted rapidly. Polls taken in the hours following the debate showed noticeable dips in Kirk's approval ratings among younger audiences and independent voters, while Crockett's credibility and favorability soared. Traditional media outlets reported the same trends, highlighting how preparation, transparency, and calm authority had eclipsed performance and bravado. The debate was no longer an isolated event. It had become a referendum on character, preparation, and trustworthiness in public life. The implications for future political battles were immediate and undeniable. Kirk's opponents recognized a vulnerability that could no longer be ignored, while supporters questioned the sustainability of his carefully curated image. Crockett, meanwhile, emerged as a figure whose influence extended beyond policy arguments. She had demonstrated that integrity and preparation could redefine the rules of engagement, that moral clarity paired with evidence could dominate a narrative previously controlled by spectacle and confidence. Her rising admiration was both a product of her performance and a reflection of the audience's hunger for authenticity and leadership. The ripple effects extended even further. Activists, educators, and community leaders began citing the debate as an example of effective advocacy, using Crockett's meticulous preparation as a blueprint for confronting misinformation and arrogance. Young voters in particular engaged with her story, seeing in her both inspiration and a model for civic engagement. Kirk's previous momentum slowed, his speeches scrutinized more carefully, and his future debates approached with a new level of skepticism. Crockett's victory, though framed as a single confrontation, had set a precedent, shifting the cultural understanding of accountability and performance in politics. Even days later, the debate continued to resonate. Clips were replayed on television, dissected in classrooms, and discussed in living rooms across the nation. Hashtags trended globally, not just domestically, emphasizing the international attention Crockett's performance had drawn. The stark contrast between her calm authority and Kirk's unraveling remained a focal point, a visual and emotional shorthand for integrity triumphing over arrogance. The audience, progressive-leaning, immigrant-friendly, and identity-pride-driven, felt a deep sense of validation. Their values had been represented, their moral compass reaffirmed, and their belief in the power of preparation and truth rewarded. But beyond the chaos, one truth emerged that would resonate far beyond the stage. The echoes of the debate lingered in the air, but Crockett's final words carried a weight far heavier than the applause or the camera flashes. She reframed the confrontation, not as a personal victory, but as a testament to the enduring power of dignity, preparation, and truth. Every fact she had presented, every pause she had taken, every calm rebuttal had been more than strategy. It had been a demonstration of what leadership could look like when grounded in integrity rather than spectacle. She reminded the audience, both in the room and watching from afar, that arrogance, no matter how polished, ultimately crumbles under scrutiny, while careful preparation and principled action stand resilient. In that moment, the hero versus villain narrative crystallized. Kirk, for all his confidence and media mastery, had relied on performance over substance, bluster over evidence. His arrogance, once captivating to followers, had been exposed as fragile, his image as untouchable reduced to fragments under the weight of accountability. Crockett, in contrast, had proven that true power is rooted not in the ability to dominate a stage or command attention, but in the capacity to uphold principles, speak truth clearly, and remain steadfast even under pressure. The contrast was unmistakable, a visual and emotional tableau that demanded reflection. The crescendo of the moment wasn't just in the fall of a public figure, it was in the affirmation of values that resonate across communities and generations. Viewers felt the impact not just as political observers, but as citizens with a stake in the integrity of their society. Crockett's methodical dismantling of falsehoods became a model, a blueprint showing that ordinary people could insist on accountability, that preparation and courage could shift the balance of power in any arena. It was an empowering lesson, reinforcing the idea that systems, no matter how entrenched, can be challenged by those willing to act with purpose and principle. Audiences connected with the narrative emotionally. Progressive-leaning, immigrant-friendly viewers, proud of their identity and invested in the values of justice and equity, saw themselves in Crockett's journey. Her calm authority, her meticulous preparation, and her commitment to truth reflected the values they held dear. They felt validation, seeing that these principles could triumph even against opponents armed with influence, confidence, and spectacle. Her victory became not only a personal accomplishment, but a symbolic triumph for communities demanding respect, dignity, and moral clarity. Crockett's closing words elevated the confrontation from a political clash to a universal moral lesson. She spoke of the importance of vigilance, the responsibility of citizens to question power, and the necessity of holding leaders accountable. Her statements resonated beyond partisanship, emphasizing that character, courage, and integrity are not political luxuries. They are societal necessities. In this framing, the debate transformed into a story of empowerment. Ordinary people could demand honesty, could insist on truth, and could witness the collapse of arrogance when confronted by reason and moral clarity. As the audience absorbed her words, a sense of hope filled the space. The theatrical tension of the debate had given way to a moment of reflection, one that illuminated the potential for change in public life. Crockett's performance reminded everyone that values are not abstract. They are tested in moments of confrontation, revealed when pressure mounts, and celebrated when integrity prevails. It was a reminder that vigilance, preparation, and courage are the tools with which society can challenge falsehoods, elevate truth, and ensure accountability in leadership. Ultimately, the resolution was both personal and collective. Kirk's arrogance had faltered, his credibility diminished. Crockett's composure, preparation, and moral clarity had elevated her to a standard worth emulating. But beyond the individuals, the moment reinforced a timeless truth. When dignity meets diligence, when preparation confronts deception, and when truth faces arrogance, integrity will prevail. The audience understood that the confrontation was not simply a spectacle to be consumed, but a lesson in courage, values, and the power each person holds to demand accountability in their own lives. And as the dust settled, the nation was left with a clear choice and a lesson that would not be forgotten. Charlie Kirk's exposure wasn't just a viral moment, it was a revelation. In front of a live audience and a nation watching online, his carefully curated image of confidence and control crumbled under the weight of undeniable evidence. Crockett's calm, prepared, and principled approach had not only dismantled his arguments, but illuminated a universal truth. Integrity, preparation, and moral courage always outshine arrogance and deception. The spectacle was shocking, yes, but the lesson ran deeper, resonating far beyond politics or partisan lines. This wasn't just a debate victory. It was a masterclass in accountability. Crockett's poise reminded the audience that courage is not measured by loudness or theatrics, but by clarity, knowledge, and the ability to stand unwavering in the face of falsehood. Her triumph affirmed that ordinary people, when armed with preparation and conviction, have the power to demand truth, challenge arrogance, and shift the narratives that shape society. It was a moment of validation for anyone who has ever felt overshadowed or dismissed, a reminder that integrity can prevail even against those who seem untouchable. Now, it's your turn. Join the conversation, share this story, and amplify the message that accountability matters. Subscribe to stay informed, engage with debates that challenge falsehoods, and be part of a community that values truth, dignity, and courage above all else. The fight for justice is ongoing, but moments like these remind us that change is possible, that power can be checked, and that heroes exist among us who refuse to back down. The fight for truth isn't over, and now, you know what it takes to stand tall.